Go down in the forest today.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, so good, Gerald, that you have it all figured out with your Zoom now. That's great.
Well, yeah, I just got up a little bit earlier, been working on it. Got her started.
Well, it's good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you all. We're waiting for, I wonder how many.
Oh, who knows? You got some of the teachers coming on, right? Over in Great Falls, Gerald?
No, I don't know. This lady must be from, she must be from Turtle Mountain.
Oh, that's a friend of mine.
I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of, I forward some of the links to some folks over in Fort Berthold.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I see one on. I see two on so far.
Yeah. I see
Three,
Ace.
I believe now.
Ace's name popped on.
Okay. Well,
There it is.
good. There's the ace. Okay. Just like any event that we have in our native country, Gerald.
Yes.
Can you start off with a little prayer, and then maybe some of the people new, you could give a sort of a brief introduction, and then we'll get going.
And Gerald and Lanny, you want us to record this? You want Casey to record everything then? That's okay with everybody?
Yeah.
That would be good. That would be nice. Yeah,
Okay.
I would appreciate it. Yeah. I'll defer the prayer to you, Lenny.
Okay. Kayajik barish, barit diga, much good digital. I'll get go kara. You know, I base cook baga, we go down, go kara, but ballivo. Balili very kill, barit diga, balias, I be. Balay nerit to the kill, they watch it. Balidashti, balias, like be the cuichi, our kui would cool, barit diga. Ma what you go elis jig, balago, which probably do is a case, but street get a badu card, aspagadulak. Balela golesh, itche was mama de gitche, Javil, Mama Chubagama Gaja, hook bought it, you got it, stage, you got it, you got it. Look after all the homes and the families that are represented today, and maybe some good blessings come to their homes with your protection and guidance like that. If there's any special prayers in their hearts, maybe you could be merciful to them and be kind and gentle and help them and steer them in the right way or guide them or take them along. Take it, Ajik. Short prayer like that. Heavenly Father, thank you. Oh. All right.
All right, let's see.
Gerald, if I may just briefly introduce someone as we get started.
Sure.
Okay, Dr. Donna Brown is on the call. She's the brand new president of Turtle Mountain Community College. She just started this week. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we have a new guest here, and I sent the invitation out for her just to kind of join in with this group and get a finger on the pulse of what kind of work that we're doing. And so I just want to extend my welcome to Dr. Brown and introduce her to you all. So Dr. Brown, I don't know if you want to say a few words just to introduce yourself to the group here as we get started.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you can. Okay. I was just typing in the chat because I'm having a real problem with my sound system in here. But okay, there I am. Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to sit on the meeting today. I am the new president. This is my 5th day. It's my first week. So I'm still kind of settling in and getting to learn about what's going on here, all the good things, and learning and being introduced to an awful lot of people. So I appreciate that. I'm very interested in this aspect of our college and what our mission is, and all tribal colleges, I guess. Very interested in language revitalization. So I'm interested to see what all of you have been doing thus far. and how I can help in any way going forward. So thank you for allowing me to sit in today.
You're welcome. Glad to know that you know you have a lot of passion and interest and inspiration to join and serve your community like that. Go ahead, Gerald.
All right. Do we have everybody on? I wonder if some of the other teachers coming on.
Well,
Hello?
we'll just get going. It's 10 anyway.
Yeah, I'll text Velda right now. I know she accepted the calendar invite, but she may have some challenges getting on, but I'll text her right now to see if she can get on. But otherwise, I'd say let's go ahead.
Yeah, Ace? Okay. Oh, Ace, are you trying? Are you able to say something? I
Can
can't
you hear
hear.
me okay? Can you hear me okay?
There you go.
Yeah, I'm just going to text Velda just now because she did accept the calendar invite on my end. But I'll see if she can connect as we get started here.
Okay.
Melba is on.
She's on. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, she's on.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Good. I didn't see her. Oh, perfect. She's right there. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, you know, we wanted to have this particular Zoom meeting, I guess, so that we could talk about or listen to Lanny's presentation in regards to how much time it takes to become a fluent speaker. And we're talking about fluency. But anyhow, Lanny, you want to go ahead with that?
Okay.
Our time is flying by here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lanny Realbird. I live in Crow Agency, Montana. That's where I'm broadcasting from this morning. And I'm very honored to serve you this morning and to share some information and maybe somehow, some way, some of the words that are exchanged with our dialogue and our presentation, as well as, you know, our discussion, somehow, some way that it opens a path to people who have the hope and the encouragement, as well as the inspiration on all levels of our community, from the grassroots to many of the people who represent our governments, that somehow, some way that it brings our people together to where we're inspired to make changes and to find those, link up and put those paradigms together to where we succeed and carry on into the next generations. At this time, I'm going to start this discussion basically talking, presenting to you a concept that sometimes is probably not misunderstood by a lot of our people in the community. First of all, I'd like to put the perspective of this presentation from the viewpoint of our grassroots people, our elders, and family members. A lot of times, many of these people aren't represented in the governance organizations regarding policy or decisions made in our communities, like the institutions that represent our educational systems. Maybe it's the college, the Head Start, maybe the local schools. A lot of these people are very concerned, but they sometimes miss out on basically an orientation to the language of language revitalization. Their assumption sometimes is something in the line that we all speak English, but sometimes those English terms are or have their own definition in some of these communities. I've noticed that throughout a lot of communities in Indian country, where elders might have the assumption that a term, like for example, the one we're talking about today, fluency, has the same connotation and the meaning of what they assume it is. Like for example, a lot of our native people, particularly, I guess speaking from where I come from the Crow perspective, as well as also a member of MHA, there wasn't historically a printed or a language that had what we have as we understand the written language here in the Western world. We had an oral culture. We told stories. We experienced literacy in a different way that many people understand literacy today. People understand literacy from the written literature and the knowledge, information that they gain from writing or understanding literature from media presentations. Our literature stems from understanding nature, the ecology, the astronomy, the environment, the changes in the weather, the climate, the movement of the animals, the migration, the season changes, the moon. A lot of times, all of these cycles were the basis for our calendar for medicine bundle openings, ceremonies, pipe ceremonies, celebrations, name giving. All of these were our literature. They were an oral literature. So in that sense, when we say fluency, a lot of times the elders that I know of, and many people yet in some of these native communities, understand fluency as somebody who's an expert speaker. Well, then if you contrast that with the Western movement, where we have people who are in the academic or the Western world, they will quantify and qualify the concept of fluency to more technical, scientific type of delivery. And why I say that is because a lot of people don't look into or read Western academic journals like the ones that I'm talking about that are represented in the grassroots levels of our families and our homes and our elders and the people that aren't represented in the governance and the policy making organizations that are governing our Native communities. A lot of these parents are left out into the orientation of what it means to be fluent or what it means to understand the teaching methods that are going on in our schools. So that's the point I want to make, that we have fluency coming from a Western view and fluency from a nativist view. Fluency from the nativist view basically would be the concept of where we have our people thinking and having the concept that fluency is somebody who's speaking well and knows a lot of words and knows about the worldview of where they're expressing from. And what we have in this situation is a cultural and a regional English difference of understanding terminology. People will think that fluency, again, the assumption that it's somebody who can speak well and understands the worldview of our tribal people, do not take that definition into the understanding of the Western academic world, where fluency is basically the ultimate achievement in language learning, to the point where fluency is someone who can be a master or a teacher, someone who can speak over 60,000 words, somebody who can read, write. Okay, that read, write component or literacy is not the same literacy, again, coming from the historic foundations of our nativist people. Okay, now this is, I'm gonna invite you to look at this. What I have here in this presentation is that we have to basically join forces with our community, especially when we want to get these people to support us, because some of the outcomes that we're going to need is that all of us are going to be on the same page. And if we don't have the same definitions of fluency, as well as what I'm going to approach, we may be missing a link or may be missing great support. I noticed one thing about some of the educational experience of people who left the reservation and they came back with all of these inspirations and good ideas of making changes in the community. they had basically needed to create some kind of segue so that the community can understand their ideas and some of the educational systems and knowledge that they brought in. When they fail to do this orientation, they sometimes create a basically a resistance. As much as somebody wants to help these new people coming back into the community with their new knowledge and ideas, if they're not able to orientate them to explain or define some of these concepts, sometimes they lose them. And then they create distance with these people who originally had support. So I was just pointing that out, and that's why this presentation basically is for the holistic community of our Native people, that includes some of the elders and the grassroots people, as well as the parents who may not have had the experience or had the opportunity to participate in maybe some academic presentations. So as we look at this first slide, I want to just mention that as an organization, or even as an individual, we have to decide what our expectations of language use is. Are we going to use it for speaking? Where are we going to use it? Is it just primarily for conversational purposes? Is it the purpose for reading and writing? Is it for the purpose of just to understand that we have a background? Okay, and the point I'm getting to in terms of this information is that sometimes people understanding the Western view of fluency and that definition are setting the bar a little too high. Fluency should be probably another outcome on an additional goal of creating conversational speakers. And that's my whole point here. So we need to determine our outcome. Is it fluency? And fluency to the expectations of Western standard are going to be somebody that's a lifelong learner, that's going to be somebody that has spent years in the process, somebody that can read, write, as well as being a master or a teacher. So that definition is almost really too tough for some of our community members, particularly people like some of us starting at a ground zero level, to where we just want to be able to speak to our aunts, our uncles, our children, and have them reply back and just go hunting with them, go to the store with them, have a little dialogue of going down the road, and enjoy the pleasantries of humor in our conversation, the attachment to belonging, the ownership to be part of our communities. And sometimes, you know, with some of the standards that are Western concepts that are academic concepts, sometimes our people are not going to understand these. So what I'm thinking and what I'm presenting here is that the primary goal of many of our programs should be focused on building conversational speakers. And with that concept of creating conversational speakers versus fluent speakers, the timeline for learning the language is a lot shorter than it is for creating somebody who's fluent. And in that slide there, with the Bighorn Mountains in the distance, is the reinforcement that us natives, even in our regional English, have a different terminology and definition than somebody that is possibly in the academic world over at the University of Montana or somebody at University of North Dakota. We may hear the same English and hear the same sounds and think they're familiar, but totally those words totally make a whole lot of difference than how we understand them. Again, I'm pointing out here that Western view versus the native view, because we had historically been an oral culture, and our literacy relates to the environment, to the ecology, to the universe, to the seasons, to many of those foundations that define who we are totally different from the structures of the Western world that many of us are familiar with. So again, back to the point that our easiest goal and the shortest timeline to get where we want to go is the practical goal of to be conversational. Fluency, now we're going to put it aside just for a while, is that we're going to need these people that we create conversational speakers to become teachers at some time. So in a long-term plan, in a strategic plan, or an assessment of our community to find speakers, to find teachers, we have that process defined in basically an institution that we create, or it's some of the planning that we necessarily need to have to carry on this movement. So fluency is important, but it would be another goal, because many of our people in our communities, and I could say that from Crow Agency, Montana here, are not familiar with the language. Okay, again, like I said earlier, that the outcome, speaking the language becomes easier, because becoming a conversational speaker is a lot easier than it does become a person who reads, writes, understands the science of bilingualism, understands the technology or technical terms of linguistics. That is a totally different world. And sometimes when we bombard our people, especially like, maybe parents who want their kids to speak the language with terms like, morphology, we bombard them with phonetics, and we have these terms that are totally associated with that science of linguistics. They don't understand it. So even as they hear it, half the conversation is in one ear and out the other. And what these parents are probably wanting to know is that, how are we going to teach these students? How are we going to use the methods that are available to get them to say, how are you? I'm fine. How about yourself? Oh, I'm just chilling. How about you? I'm good. When did you get here? I got here at 10. Who'd you come with? I came with my little sister and my son. And then you see the parents then understand that here's a scenario, here's a learning environment that I'm familiar with. Here's something that's comfortable in my frame of reference. But if I hear these terms that are complex, that are not necessarily spoken over at the post office, or where we drink coffee here in our native communities, or where we gather, or even on Facebook, that totally sometimes creates a wall and a distance for some of our people. Well, anyway, I just wanted to point that out. So it is, again, like I said, that we're going to probably shift our goals to get more support from our community, to create aspects of where we can invite parents to be part of the system. We can invite aunts and uncles, but if we come in with this bilingualist type of approach or linguistics and have that terminology, and then we have these less applicable, ways that language had historically been taught, it's still not going to get anywhere. Why I'm saying that is that there's a priest here on the Crow Indian Reservation that delivers the Catholic Mass in Crow. It's scripted and it's recorded, and he's very knowledgeable. But I asked him one day, I went to his mission, and I said, you have a lot of resources to help people teach and learn the language. And you represent, the movement of bilingualism. Why isn't there anything being done formally through the resources that you have? And his response was that, I got to be blunt with you, that bilingualism was created to teach the Crow English. It is no means to teach them how to speak Crow. They have to figure that out themselves. And that was his point. And that's my point, that with bilingualism, it was a movement to basically dilute our strength and power of the language that define our culture and our heritage and who we are. So now, with this movement, a lot of people are awakening again. They're revitalizing, like the people at Turtle Mountains, some of the people in the immersion schools across Montana, some of the places like the Crow Grade School, Crow Elementary, people in Wyola, Montana, people over in the Salish Kootenai area that have an immersion school that are doing well. These people have actualized those influences to make these changes, and I'm sure I might be talking to the choir to some of those people with that experience, but they understand, and sometimes it helps to get that reminder. Okay, as we're speaking or learning to speak, there are a number of methods. I just listed a few, and most of these you could find a lot of information online, or I'll leave my email address. Some of you have that on that invitation, and I could share what I have basically about immersion, total physical response. We had one of our last get-togethers this past summer was we had a person who was the authority in the master apprentice method of teaching the language, and she had presented to us that there were some timelines of creating people to be conversational, and that was awesome, because it isn't as long as we might think it would be. The challenge here, though, is that we have to create time in our own lives to become speakers. If we think that we're going to sit there and sit in some classroom and some angel's going to drop out of the sky and put this knowledge into our head, I think we're fooling ourselves, because we have to do our part. It's just like that no miracle is not going to happen unless we do our part and connect with nature that way, as well as the greater power. Okay, let's shift gears to a presentation that Gerald and I had experienced with the Potlatch Foundation out of Seattle, Washington. We had participated in some of their presentations and conferences where they presented some strategies in formalizing our language plans. And one of the facilitators there was a guy that helped create the Salish Kootenai Immersion School, and was instrumental over there in the language revitalization of his people, and that was Tachini Pete. And he gave us a paradigm that was very interesting. If we consider some of our communities of where language is happening, like, for example, the public schools, the Head Start programs, and tribal colleges, we're not getting enough instructional time. Here's an interesting point that they shared with us, that I'll get to the point, that it takes 2,000 hours to learn the language. And that's basically to get a handle of it and to be conversational. And it's up to us to look at the challenge of being committed to this time. And it may be shorter, depending on our time commitment. It may be shorter because some of our native languages are less complex than others. Like, for example, the other day I spoke to one of my linguistic friends who's on the working with the Nueta language program in Twin Buttes, North Dakota. We previously worked on other projects before. And since he had this linguistic perspective, I asked him, where does the Hidatsa and Mandan and Crow related languages fit in the scale of how the Foreign Service Institute examines how difficult the language is? Well, he said, basically, you have to understand that this is from an English point of view. and some of the English-related languages are going to be easier. But if we have people who basically, like, unfortunately in our communities, are speaking more English and more oriented to English, some of these languages, of course, are going to be easier for them, but to be a second language learner and acquire these languages, the degree of difficulty may be a little bit more challenging. But then if a person has some orientation, like for example in Soto, or they have some orientation in Cree, and they understand this, then that FSI, that language difficulty rating, will be a little bit different. So let me get back to this again. Some of our native languages are easier than others. That's my point. Another point is that it's going to take less time for us to be conversational in some of them. Take a little bit more time in others. And the key to that is to create more contact time, because here's what was presented to Gerald and I. Okay, if it takes 2,000 hours to learn a language, a school year has about approximately 100 days or 36 weeks, 11,800 hours available for K through 12. Most schools may be teaching, and this is a minimum, 1 hour per week of language. So that means there's 36 hours per school year of language. In order to become conversational or just to know the language, look at that point right down there. 55 years in the systems that are happening in our public schools. 55 years. That's not accomplishing anything. So our challenge as community people, as grassroots, as people that work with boards, people that work with policy makers, decision makers, we have to find a strategy of creating more contact time or diversify these courses to where we have more language instruction across the curriculum. Okay, let's shift gears back to this acquisition part. A lot of times our communities set aside some good funds for our people, and we create summer language programs. Okay, again, back to that standard that was presented to Gerald and I over at Potlatch. 2,000 hours. Okay, these camps might be 2 weeks or 80 hours. That's 8 hours a day, okay, for 5 days a week. Divide that 2,000 by 80 hours, 25 years for our people to become fluent. So that's even, that's almost 1 generation to become a speaker. That's not gonna do. That's not gonna do. Okay, back to that reference that Ticini made, and then I'm gonna come back to it. There are some languages that are easier and harder than others, especially if you come from the English reference. If you understand English and you speak English, some of these languages are gonna be easy. So unfortunately, many of our people aren't speaking, so they're gonna fit in this category. Unfortunately, that Spanish might be easier to speak for some of our community people than their own language. So like we see in the cognate languages, 800 hours, unrelated, like Japanese, 2,200, and it just goes on. And then they have proficiency and expert. I'll just leave that for you. If you want this, a PDF of this PowerPoint, remember to email me and I'll send this. And here's that point that I made again about the Foreign Service Institute. They have a rating of how these languages are easier from the point of English speakers. And category 1 is the easier one. Okay, these are all related to English. Here's category 2, just a little step up. Category 3, these are languages that where our people will fit in. When I spoke with Hendrik over there in Twin Buttes, he said Crow is going to be in this category 3. Hidatsa is going to be in this category 3 because it's unlike English. And if we have speakers primarily speaking English, that level of difficulty will be in this area. But if these speakers or these people who are learning understood Hidatsa, understood Mandan and Crow, had a little bit of background, this category may be lowered to 1 or 2. So it just depends on some of the experience people have with their languages. Okay, and category 5 gets more complex with other languages, and then, excuse me, we move on to a category 5 of the most challenging. I want to point out that in our discussion recently, that this category 5 is the most difficult, and there are some languages that are going to be really difficult for our people. So we have to plan likewise. Okay, the reality, some of our speakers, again, their primary language is English, and they're going to be acquiring their own native language as second language speakers. Okay. In summarizing our discussion, Hendrik and I, we had this, what are the most difficult? And he said, well, Hidatsa, Crow, and Dakota are going to be a little bit easier, a little bit more difficult for Mandan. And the hard languages are going to be the Cree, Ojibwe, and Arikara, because he started giving me a whole technical explanation in paragraphs that I'd rather not touch on, but I paraphrased some of the information, that some of the construction and the linguistic fundamentals of these languages are more complex with the terminology that I put down in those factors to make it a little bit more challenging than some of the relatively easy languages like Hidatsa and Crow and Dakota. Okay, again, here's another summary of how some of these languages are a little bit easier than some. That's if we were English speakers. Again, that's the scenario where we're at. Okay, let's go back to this. If we do the math, we stick with a method, whether it's master apprentice, whether it's a full immersion, whether it's Montessori, whether it's maybe some app that we found that it was very successful in teaching people. Let's use the standard again presented by Potlatch that we have 2,000 hours with the opportunity to create more contact in our schools 4 or 5 hours. That means that we may have a language class, a vocabulary class, basically a conversational class, maybe a storytelling class, an oratory class, a history class, a music class, and consolidate all of these to where we get more contact time. It's going to shorten the duration of us acquiring the language. So if we had the opportunity to do 5 hours a week, you know, that's still quite a bit of time. For 2,000 hours, if we did 10,000 a week, 200 weeks, that's quite a bit. That's, you know, 52, that's almost a little over 2 years. That other one is almost, you know, quite a bit longer. Okay, moving on. If we had implemented a full immersion master apprentice, and we at least at a minimum did 30 hours a week, we'd have 66 weeks. And with, like, for example, 20 days in a month, hypothetically, that goes along with what some of the information that's presented on the internet. Sometimes you see some kind of promotion or some kind of something flash by that says that, you know, like Babbel, you could learn something in 3 months, or they have another other promos that are going on that we see constantly. That seems to be a general area to where people can be functionally conversational 3 months. So if we had 30 hours a week in our schools, in our systems, and making those appropriate changes to adapting and creating courses, like, for example, in our Head Start, in our K through 12 systems that are already there, as well as our tribal colleges. That's where we're at. So again, here's my point. We need to increase contact time. And sometimes maybe these systems that we let control us like the state governments in public education, we just let that happen. We, as community members, as voters, as people living in the public and taxpayers, we need to make the people in those upper echelons of the governance to understand with data, with information, research that we can all create, to let them know that it's more effective for developing an outcome to create speakers to increase that contact time. And we need that information, those arguments, those premises, that research, and that data to substantiate that, to make these changes. Because a lot of times in the Western world, they're not just going to do it because we ask. We need substantial information put together in presentations so that we can succeed in this. Gerald, were you saying something?
No, you were we weren't able to hear you there for a while.
Are we good? Casey, are we good on the sound?
Yeah, we're good. I caught all.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, now what we basically, at some point in time, not after this presentation, to go down and knock on the doors and have a protest, but we basically, at some point in time, present it to many of the board of directors in our Head Start, in our K through 12, our tribal college board of directors, and other policy making organizations in our communities, so we can all get on the same page. And like I said, we need to complement this language across the curriculum, which happens a lot in tribal colleges. So we need to somehow create courses to where we create curriculum in geography, history, mathematics, music, even our extracurricular activities to increase more contact time. And that's going to take our creativity and our innovation, and possibly, if somebody's doing it somewhere, that we work together and mentor each other, so that some of these events some of these paradigms are going to happen and become the reality of the history of our people. Okay, we're moving on to this. Like, for example, if it was like, if I had somebody listening to me at our tribal college, I would say, we need a class in vocabulary. We need almost 6-10 hours a week of conversation. We need some storytelling. We need some oratory. And then take it from there, but we would also probably need some time to create that, the lessons, the planning, and that's not going to be overnight. That's just going to take a thorough, effective team building strategy of a strategic plan of where we're all on the same page in our communities, especially with our elders, especially with our community people, because we can utilize these parents at home if they know what and how they can help, and even themselves learn the language at home to reinforce the instruction that's happening. And the most definitive solution that many of our tribal nations are doing is that they've created their own schools. And that's where we see this movement today. Okay. I'm going to make some more comments. I want to go back to the number of words that it takes to become conversational. Again, we got to understand that some of these languages have a degree of difficulty, maybe from the Crow-Hidatsa perspective, maybe from the Chippewa and the Ojibwa and the Cree perspective, from the Dakota, as well as the mainstream English-speaking Western world. Some people are saying, like, for example, in preparing for this presentation, that you might need 1,000 words. And some of these 1,000 words, of course, they're the same word, but they're only in different tenses. So you multiply that by 5 and how they might be used, or 4 or 3. But for example, for Crow, one word may cover several tenses and not necessarily be sophisticated as some of the tenses in Cree, some of the tenses in English or German. So that saves time for some of us. Okay, so that means that some people can possibly get by with just knowing 300 in some of the native languages. Some people, of course, they're going to need that 1,000 benchmark or whatever benchmarks they set, because we got to remember that some of this information is presented to us from people who are English speakers, academics, and come from the Western world of interpreting this information that they're so familiar with, so accustomed and orientated that some of us, this is even if we have a background in education, this sometimes can be foreign to us, or it takes us time to digest and facilitate into our own worldview. So I wanted to point that out, that sometimes in terms of building vocabulary, again, that's going to shorten the duration of where we become speakers by understanding that we don't need that many to be conversational. But these people that we create as speakers, these conversational people, we're going to have to create another level to where these people become teachers, and then we'll have a whole lot of other disciplines, whole other type of structure and scientific terminology that we're going to expect them to learn, like the word syntax, like the word morphology, like the word linguistics, like syntax. All of these types of terminologies aren't going to fit in this conversational level and are going to be on the fluency level, because we've basically at a time that we need to create teachers as well as create conversational people. And that's another level up. I just want to point out that as I'm coming across this, our experience with the potlatch was really enlightening to me. That Ticini had pointed out that some of the people that are totally involved in some of the efforts at these immersion schools had formalized some of these processes that I'd like to just point out that are on the slide. For example, the communities of the Salish Kootenai had actually developed a teacher training plan of how they're going to teach using those methods. Some of us are at ground zero in our language experience, may have to examine that and implement that so that our communities are on the same page. We would examine the fine-tuning of language acquisition in the methods that are available and the methods that we decide. How we transfer this language, an instructional plan. And I'd like to shift gears here to where we have an assessment. An assessment is basically something that we as Native people have to utilize in a transition to make our organization sustainable. We have to document our needs not only for ourselves, but for possibly philanthropy purposes. For example, we can come out and say in a qualitative statement that our languages are threatened. But if we applied for a grant, basically like some of the most common grants out there, like A&A, they're going to need scientific information, data. They're going to need a means to substantiate our needs, and that's why, hence, we have that word assessment there. Once we collect this data from some of our populations, we can define this need in basically a quantitative way to where it's in numbers, because a lot of these people that are reading these grants are going to these scientific types, they're going to be Western thinkers or maybe trained in that Western thinking type of mentality, even though they're native. And that's just their training and their expectations of being grant readers. So they're programmed to look for certain elements that define a need, particularly not only in the qualitative presentation that we have, that we explain in a maybe in a prose manner of how the language loss is affecting our people, but we also have these numbers to substantiate that. And then as we go along, we develop questions that we would find out what methods are available for our people, whether they're preschool or they're adult learners. We got to find out what are the hours of where they like to instruct, where would they like to be instructed, what are their transportation needs, what are their skills that they'd like to do to help our students. So if we start building these assessments to where we find out what our community needs and we're able to communicate with them some of the practicalities that I stated earlier in terms of being on the same page of defining terms, we're going to solidify the unity or the momentum of us working together. And then these documents like the strategic plan, that's basically imagining and creating a plan of taking your language into the future, possibly 10 years. And I had the honor of providing a 10-year plan for the hosts of this presentation, Gerald Gray and the Little Shell tribe. And that was almost like a 72-page document with short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals and objectives. So at this time, we got some time, but that we can. Would like to open it up for some discussion, some feed, or maybe some reinforcement, or maybe something points to ponder, maybe critique. And please just say anything's on your mind, so everything is valuable. Or else I'm just going to call on you, like you, Ace. Go ahead.
I've got something to say, so I'll start. Yeah, Lanny, I really appreciate the presentation that you provided, and I think some things that really stood out to me, having been exposed to like some of the Romance languages that you kind of talked about, I would agree, like the grammatical patterns in those languages are so much easier than, because now I'm learning Ojibwe and I'm finding like I hit those walls so much harder learning Ojibwe versus like French or Spanish. And it does take a longer period of time. And I think that's just a realistic understanding for people to try to grapple with as we plan for language revitalization. The other thing that I really appreciated that you mentioned is you talked about like worldview being connected to language revitalization, as well as culture and oratory, components as well. And I think that those things really go hand in hand. If language is taught in a vacuum and that language is isolated from everything, and that those other perspectives are not joined with the linguistic aspects that the learner needs to be exposed to, I think we're missing a really, really huge piece of the puzzle. And those traditional worldviews, the philosophies that Indigenous people had prior to Western exposure, European exposure. I think revitalizing those worldviews alongside of revitalizing the language, I think it provides a lot of necessary context and understanding for how that language is often embedded. And those philosophies in the language are really intertwined, and you see kind of the resonating mentalities embedded in the language. And I know there's a lot of technical stuff that would be involved with that, like the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis in linguistics. But Yeah, again, I really appreciate the overview that you provided, the presentation. I think it's on point with the kinds of planning that need to occur. And the last thing I'll mention is the engagement of parents and the community. I think those are really, really critical in how we engage, especially as we're talking about like young learners with immersion schools and things like that. If we have distinct plans for those constituent groups in our communities, and making sure that they're involved and that maybe they even have opportunities to learn and to support language revitalization in the household. I think breaking the mentality that language instruction only happens in a school setting is something that we need our community members and our parents to really, really grapple with, because I think everyone on some level holds some kind of responsibility, excuse me, some kind of responsibility to help with that revitalization effort. If we all are working together, that the process is going to go a lot slower, a lot faster. So again, I think that your presentation, I think, cued a lot of things in my mind. And again, I appreciate the content that we covered today.
Thank you. Jade, can you turn on your audio, please? Okay.
I thought you were going to break.
How's it going over there, Jay?
Nothing. You know, I want to share. That I've been chewing on here. Many of you know we did a bunch of legislative actions in the past with the state of Montana. One of the issues now that we're coming upon is that now that all of the tribal public school systems are becoming aware of the facts that typify tribal languages in their community, that collective effort then to say, let's do some legislation that allows our public school systems then to really seriously consider tribal heritage languages for all of the reasons that we're recognizing. The principal reason behind making certain then that our languages are maintained is that the language is the key to the entirety of tribal everything. All of that being said, who wants to get involved in producing some legislative language then that changes first this issue here in the state of Montana, in the public school system? Tribal languages are referred to as other world languages. So as other world languages, then they are technically not giving the tribal space or the tribal environment in that public school system to really start to carry out language functions then that are academic contributors to a public school system then that has been in failure mode for the past 40 years. So in short then, the tribal will and the tribal public school system will either become part of the solution, or ultimately then tribes will continue to play the closing eyes dance as it concerns language instruction in our schools. So I want everybody to think about that, especially those of you who get a paycheck from the public school system.
Man, awesome. You are saying. Okay, if anybody would like to make some comment, you could
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I don't know. I'm not sure if you could hear me. Hello, my name's Lorene Menzabov. Good morning, everybody. Thoroughly enjoying your presentation, and I have a couple questions. Like when it comes to resources, are there some available, especially pertaining to TPR? That's total physical response, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are there already, is there already resources available where like I could download or or adapt, like for my language? And
Right off the bat, if you looked on YouTube and looked up Birdie Siegel Cook, and she has some videos on there to help you understand that method a little bit more. And then I'm not sure if there's any link, but then you could start that search from her. We brought her into Montana a few years back, and we had a conference over in Billings, and we had her present for a couple days. But she has this formal instructional presentation of how to teach TPR in the classroom. And I believe she has some of her, you can check that YouTube. But her name is spelled B-E-R-T-Y, Siegel, S-E-G-A-L-C-O-O-K. That would be the first one I would start with. And then as you go along with your search, I think you'll begin to get more resources that you can look at your own time.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments they'd like to make?
Hey, good morning. I'd like to have a question and a comment for Lanny. Hello, Gerald.
Hi.
I appreciate your, the language acquisition, calculations that you did. I think it's really important that we really get that information across. I know sometimes it's a challenge in our schools when we have majority non-native teachers teaching our native kids in tribal communities. It's been a challenge, but I think it's really good that we can break down the terminology from like fluency in a Western perspective to, like you said, conversation, whatever it is, introductions for the speakers, the language speakers. And I think it can be intimidating for them to go from not having no experience to, moving up the level to some introductory experience to some, intermediate, and then as it further gets along. So I just really think I appreciate your the calculations that you provided and how long it could take, and that how long we might have in the classrooms too. So I just wanted to share that. Appreciate your information. Thanks for the invite too.
Hi, this is Donna. I just wanted to say, the information that you provided really shows me, and I didn't realize this before, just how important it is, or how learning the language for some of our people could be a reality if we understood and knew the things that you presented. So for example, when I think about language revitalization on our reservation schools, in Head Start and in elementary, the kids are going to learn how to count. They might learn their colors. They might learn Christmas Carol to sing in Ojibwe or whatever, but then they drop off. They don't ever learn anything further than that. They're not learning how to, carry that through. And then when you get to college, then you have the option of taking some language classes, but there's no continuity there. And I think that's a big piece that we have to make sure that we involve the community and involve the parents and whatever we need to do to make sure there's that continuity, so they don't lose that bit that they learned when they're kids and they absorb it so well, and just keep building on that throughout the years.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lanny. I know a lot of this, but seeing it and seeing those numbers, I feel such a sense of urgency. And your suggestion that, action, something has to be done, because every time, more years go by, we lose another generation. And these languages are critically endangered as it is. Years ago, when I visited in Kusum, when they first started, and I had conversations with Pat Pierre and Stephen Small Salmon, and I naively asked, well, what subjects do you teach? Because I'm thinking, from a Western perspective of immersion, And well, who's teaching math in Salish? Who's teaching science in Salish? Who's teaching whatever? And it became so clear that we're teaching our traditions, our heritage, our culture through the language. And the Western subjects, you know, that's not something that we're concerned about. And yet, if the school goes K-8, then where do those students go when they transfer back into the system? And we had these conversations about how they were no longer seen as the successful, wonderfully accomplished students that they were at Inkusum, because the public schools aren't recognizing the value in their language ability and their cultural knowledge. And so it seems like this has to be a grassroots operation that comes from the tribal communities, because also from a perspective of, you know, the K-12 public school education, I can't see them totally valuing. If you tell them that you need to spend 2,000 hours to learn this language, and we're going to set aside 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week, or have it integrated in all these other subjects, that's not going to happen in a public school setting. I don't think. I think that there will be too many objections. You know, we want to teach this, and we want to teach this, and these are the requirements and the standards and the benchmarks that students have to meet. So wonderful presentation, and I want to know what's the next step, because I think here you have all these supporters. Urgency, something has to be done.
You're certainly right. That reinforces the point of where we need to create our own institutions. You know, like, for example, even with those numbers, sometimes our people don't know that, this is off the subject. Let's say there's 3,000 Crow kids in the public school system today. Okay. Each of them are getting some funding, like $25 a day. 25 times 3,000. Just imagine that. That's how much a day some of these public schools are exploiting our people. Can you imagine that? $75,000 a day this local public school is making off our kids. Of course, it's paying for the food and the services, but just think, that's just one day. How about a week? How about a month? And it's just a profit-making system that we're not involved in. Hot lunch, we take it for granted. What about the other funding that we're missing? Anyway, I don't want to get into that. It might take another couple days. Hey, hello, Rose. Hello, Rose.
So, Landy, my question is, we're over here with St. Labrie Immersion Preschool Program. So we do curriculum, and then Miss Medicine Bull and Andy Elkshoulder do the Cheyenne language. And one of my struggles is like getting through that curriculum and, you know, the benchmarks and meeting the assessments for pre-K, and then still trying to run a full immersion. And that just the curriculum takes up half the day. So then, like, learning how to create that parallel where we're getting in the curriculum plus we're getting in the required language amounts, because we're not hitting that many hours for immersion. So how, like, creating that process, like, how do we create that parallel where we're providing both equally?
Well, I think ABB laid everything on the line and then started putting a priority list and putting some of this time where you divide the time available and commit it to this priority list that you have developed of what you've decided as a group to deliver. Basically, is it the curriculum building or is it the instruction? So you would have to look at the time you have totally available and then break it down that way and start from there. That's possibly one perspective. All right. We'll field another few comments, but it looks like we're at the point of where our hour is up. And maybe sometime or another, Gerald, I'm going to turn it back over to you and Ioana, that maybe we got a second step that we got to do in terms of discussion and presentations. Like, for example, we may field some questions from some of the participants regarding some of the methods like TPR. Maybe Ioana, we could get somebody to do a presentation on TPR, or that Blaine Ray, like we discussed at one time, and his method, like when we had Leanne Hinton. Or we could, I know one thing, that some people who are living near communities like big cities, there are Montessori schools that are glad to allow people to see their process of how Montessori is being instructed. I know there's a couple schools in Billings that are Montessori, and they're private, but they also are good people, and their system of delivery is outstanding. And I
love that idea, Lanny and Gerald. And if everybody wants to give us suggestions on either a methodology you'd like to see or a particular individual, we could reach out and see if we can set some webinars up. Does that sound good?
Okay.
And then, of course, we have a wealth of experience and practice here. So if there's anybody that would like to, I've sat in on Jay's classes, Lanny, I've sat in on your classes. If anybody would like to present as well, we could set that up. I think that'd be great to start sharing, again, practices that are working.
I think one thing to like always keep in mind or to remember, when, especially if you're lucky enough to have any elders in your community, is step away from the formal, step away from the format, step away from the presentation, step away from the PowerPoint, step away from all your book learning, all your knowledge, and go back to your grassroots and remember these are elders. And when you start doing that, you're going to start getting a whole lot more culture and stories, that will just open you up to new levels. And when it comes to language learning, to me, it's one thing that separated Native Americans, Indigenous people from all other races was our connection to spirit. And you can't do that with textbooks or studies here and there. And like, that's just like one thing I really wanted to mention. But more than that, I wanted to say thank you to Lanny. This is Amber here. Thank you for letting me know about this. And I got to get off. But I hope you all have good things in your life.
Let's get on.
You know, one of the things that I would like to suggest that Lanny, Ioana, and Ace get together on a conference call and discuss some items in terms of laying out a plan to where we go from here. Of course, I'm more concerned about what we're going to do to tie the Turtle Mountain and Little Shell together, as far as tying our programs together, and producing more for a curriculum. One thing I haven't been able to acquire from Little Shell, of course, I haven't. Turtle Mountain. I haven't asked it if you could send me a copy of a list of everything that you have that is, you're using for your language program. I'll do the same. And I talked about sharing this stuff. I've got a complete, just where I was beginning and where we were beginning with our program was to start at the Head Start level. And we have developed a curriculum for that level. It's all, is already in place. And so anyhow, I thought if the four of us could get together, discuss kind of where everything's at, where we're at, and then develop some kind of plan. Now, I mentioned to Lanny last week, or earlier this week, that we can probably end up when we tie our programs together, is applying for more grants. Turtle Mountain has done a number of things already to develop a language program. We have started collecting, a lot of materials and whatnot. We need to make sure that we are able to use those programs together and throw the stuff out or set it aside that we can't use or don't want to use. And then that plan is that's what we should do next. And as far as the entire group is concerned, we can, have another meeting, another Zoom meeting, and get their input as to what they're, looking for in their programs.
Thank you, Gerald. I had seen a presentation that was facilitated by Jay recently, a couple of them, and they were probably some of the most inspirational presentations I've heard regarding not only Ojibwe, but Cree. And that came from some sources up there near Rocky Mountain House, and the resources and the expertise that they have over there regarding the history of the Cree and the Ojibwe. And that was this, maybe you could give us just a brief on that, Jay, about the people that are helping your program there.
In the past, we'll say 18, actually this is 19 months, I have taken it upon myself to make bona fide efforts then to not only reestablish Ne'iyawen, or Cree speaking, in the classroom, where it does have a rightful place, but one of my uncles, actually two of them, one in particular, Mr. Muntu'u, or Duncan Standing Rock, he really encouraged me to find a way to reintroduce Anishinaabe into the classroom. So as a part of that strategy, then, as it were, we heated the rocks, we went to sweat, we asked Ateukan, the spirits, the authorities, if they would set up a strategy then that allowed us to bring the people in. So kind of lo and behold, we got a hold of Jim O'Chase, Mr. Edwin French Eater, and Diana Steinauer, who are all agents of the Yellowhead College in Edmonton. Yellowhead College in Edmonton then is a conglomerate of 5 tribes that provide really high-level Indigenous education. As it were, then, we made arrangements with that organization via a letter and some tobacco to begin engaging, or in our language, in the Ne'iyo language, so accessing that sacred story, them languages, we'll call them secrets. And they agreed in that their people have been waiting for our people then to reconnect them stories. So in that same regard, with the Little Shells, the missing links to their historical past then lie in the north, where our people, the Ojibwe people, then continued their escape from the colonial settler process to maintain not only Medeoin, but Big Squaw Gamik. So our law lodge and our education lodge then are what they're holding on our behalf. So they were pleased as an entire group that these stories are coming back together. So the energy that's there and the synergy that needs to be created, in this case then involves all of us. So with that collective, I do believe there's an opportunity not only for the local tribes, but for the regional tribes then to start to produce and reestablish their own true histories, as well as their lifeways then that are marked on the land. So I think, you know, I'm available. I'll be available digitally pretty much indefinitely. And one thing I want to say in addition to all of that is that the old folks in our community, they predicted this cycle. We held ceremony on the 2nd of October, and there's an old lady, she lives in this community, and only 11 of us actually showed up to participate in that event. Nonetheless, what she shared for us was historic Atsimuin, and the best that she could remember, it was a generation ago. So I do believe she described a period around 1915 where one of the tribal visionaries then predicted that our languages, not just Ne'iyawan, but Ananashnabeowan and Lakota and Abzolaka, all of those languages then would coincide with a lot of death. So the pandemic then, in my estimation, is a major educator. So with the wisdom of that old Atsimuan, then there's also a lot of fortune in this misfortune. And I do believe that, you know, as individuals, it is up to us to take advantage of this period and display serious courage and make good things happen, especially on behalf of our grandchildren. For those of you who have gained that honor, that status, I would behoove you then to move a little bit quicker, and be a little bit more deliberate in how you're going to go about reestablishing creators' languages.
Oh, well, you know, I guess to reinforce that point, I think the people of Little Shell, as well as Turtle Mountains, as well as Yellowknife, have a great opportunity to possibly network and go to another level of strengthening instruction. And I just see that through listening to some of the presentations that Jay had showcased in the past couple weeks. I guess we probably should wrap it up there, and then we'll get together again sometime, and we'll see you folks at the next function, or hopefully we'll see you online. And we'll conclude to that. And I thank you, everybody, and God bless you all.
Thanks.
Keith.